retweet that. Gonna retweet that. Actually, I think while we get this started, what I might do is also share this out. Good. Get this set back here. I need to check my levels. I'm a little low. Turn this back up. I'm going to try not to cough in front of the microphone too much. It's a cough that keeps lingering. It's super gross. And also just check and see that we're all connected. And we'll have to see if that ever decides to work. All right, let me get this back here. Doop, doop, doo. Gotta check YouTube real quick. All right, I think everything is finally clicking on. It's like every week when I try to do like a co-stream or a live stream, it just takes longer and longer and longer to get started. And get that back to right there. Okay, I think that means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sizes and sorts and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I am Juan Carlos Bagnell, of course, the SGG, the Some Gadget Guy of that part of the equation. It's the worst name for a podcast ever, but I'm going to stick with it. And of course, the QA stands for question and answer. This is an interactive live show where I try and field comments as we talk about news stories that I think deserve a little bit more attention. So maybe some news stories that might have fallen through the cracks. So we want to hear from the royal we, want to hear from you as we talk about some of the top tech stories. So let me get this back here and get this out of the way there. Okay, I've got my script. I've got my rundown. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm trying to push out for reviews. I've actually been kind of struggling. This is something we've been talking about on a couple episodes of the podcast. It's tricky when you're a one-man show. So, the chat is like way behind. So I'm going to move something out here real quick. One more time. Get rid of that. And just see if I can keep up with what's going on with the chat. So I'm seeing some people here. I'm seeing some Aditya Anil on Twitch. Hey, what's up? I'm seeing Fat Produce. I'm seeing Kimmy. I'm seeing Chris W. Seeing Chatty Boy, Fabio. Okay. Like everything is weirdly segmented between the different streaming services right now. So I'm going to try and keep up with everybody commenting because that's like the whole point of this podcast. Yeah, definitely still running in. Oh, the Nitpicker joining. Excellent. Welcome, Demir Frank. Definitely running into some issues. I like reviewing gadgets and accessories and all kinds of things. I'm having way more fun picking up some side projects, not just talking about phone after phone after phone after phone. It's one of the reasons why I left Pocket now. But now I've sort of accrued a backlog where it's roughly 4 to 6 weeks if I'm really using a product, analyzing it, shooting a review, editing that review, rendering, putting everything together in a video that I would want to show off. So I kind of had a rough conversation with a microphone manufacturer where I said, it could take me about a month. And you're like, well, that's just unacceptable. And you're like, you want me to do a video on your product for free? And it's going to be an editorial video. It's not going to be me making a commercial for your product. Well, I think people are really going to find your product, the viewers on your channel it's really going to resonate with them. And you're like, that's great. And if it's really going to resonate with them, then it'll really resonate with them in a month. And they did not seem to take kindly to that and then ceased all other communication on something else that we were working on too, as a PR company that represented a couple different brands. So those products will never come to the channel. That's one of the realities of trying to be a part of this. The other part of this is also what to do with increasingly staged and later phone reviews. This week is going to be spent scrambling to finish up coverage on the Razer Phone 2. Actually, the Razer Phone 2 that's in my bedroom right now. So, I've got the full review written. I'm about halfway through writing the camera review. We finally had some sunny weather in Southern California. Had a little pocket, a couple days. I got out. I finished all of the shots. Spoiler alert, the cameras on the Razer Phone 2 are fine. And anyone who's complaining about the camera quality on the Razer Phone 2 doesn't know how to camera. Are there quirks? Sure. Are there some disappointing aspects? Absolutely. But like all cameras, it should be a nuanced conversation of pros and cons, not, well, obviously we need to start with the assumption that the Pixel 2 is the winner because most people are mouth-breathing knuckle draggers that only ever touch a shutter button. Once you step aside from that, and you acknowledge that there's a huge spectrum of consumers, and that the Razer is an enthusiast phone, and enthusiasts aren't afraid of installing apps, then you do much better with the Razer Phone 2. And if you follow me on Instagram, it's not like I haven't been able to pull off some pretty good shots with the phone that was kind of universally classed as being one of the worst phone cameras of 2018. So, moving right along. It's now companies starting to reach out and playing me as B team or C team. So I'm very, very happy to be a part of any conversation, but it becomes difficult when a PR rep sends you a product like a month after everyone else has gotten it, and then it's going to take me a couple weeks to put that product in line and then produce another video on it, and it's not like it's going to be long term, right? So I might be 2 months out on a phone or something else, 2 or 3 months out. But it's not like I've been using that product for those 2 to 3 months. So it's becoming increasingly sensitive how I time product releases, especially as, we're going to be in for another busy season coming into the end of February, beginning of March. All of the new products are going to be announced at MWC. And I've got companies still trying to send me stuff from 2018. That's increasingly becoming sort of precious time for my ability to work things out. Steve DeRoche, Juan's guilty pleasure is taking good photos with camera phones that are usually panned by fellow critics. It's not even a guilty pleasure. It's a straight up perverse pleasure. Every single time I see someone, oh, this camera's garbage. It's overexposed. My absolute favorite one is watching the Razer Phone 2 video with Linus, where he's complaining about the camera, and all he does is he throws up like 3 selfies. And he's telling you the Razer Phone 2 camera overexposes and it looks like garbage. And the Razer phone has the best looking selfie of the 3 that he posts up. I think it's like the Razer phone, the Pixel, and like a Galaxy. I can't remember what the three options are. I just remember well, your evidence doesn't support what just came out of your face. That's what I'm getting tired of. It's like, well, if this phone had better SEO, I mean, if this phone's camera were better, I would take more care in composing shots with it. Most of the time I see bad photos from someone and they're using that as the argument for why this camera is garbage, it's usually because they're going in with the assumption that something else has already won, so they're not really taking time. They're not really taking care in composing a good photo. When that phone wins the SEO battle, you see these beautifully composed shots. Then when a phone is sort of already predestined to be garbage, it's like, oh, I tried to take a picture of this fire hydrant at midnight under a yellow street lamp, and you can tell by the colors that this is garbage. And you're like, well, yeah, because that's a garbage setup with garbage competition and garbage lighting. I don't see those kinds of photos being used overly to test, an iPhone. An iPhone, it's more about like, look at this beautiful like landscape that I cover. Oh, this amazing macro shot that I got. So the reason why I'm putting this out there, and I hope I get some comments on this, and I hope I get some commentary on this, it's getting harder and harder to just do like long-term wrap-ups or revisiting a phone. One, we all know that phones have plateaued. So we're already on kind of the decline of the excitement of trying to cover the new bleeding edge of smartphone tech. I'm becoming increasingly more interested in, like, I want to call them high-end phones now. So like high-end at around the $500 to $600 price point, I think is a way more exciting market for a lot of manufacturers than the upper tier, now approaching $1,000 on all manufacturers. Where I feel like differentiating features are becoming increasingly slim over phones that cost $200 to $300 less. But it's getting kind of tough. So the reason why this is kind of getting sparked, why I want to have a conversation about this, like, what do we do about a phone that's a little bit older? It's already had its initial surge. So if I spend all of this time making a video that's like sort of a normal review, then that phone's already been talked to death. Or not talked to death, but it's increasingly unlikely that I'm going to get much traction on a fully produced review, which takes me a very long time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And so one of the phones that I'm a little sensitive about, I just got the Honor View 20. It's a great phone. If I make a video saying, hey, this is a great phone, and it's real powerful, and the camera's awesome, and ooh, look at that, it's got a hole punch instead of a notch. Wow, check this out. I'm bringing nothing new to the conversation. I'm like, there's no point in me making that video, right? That video's already been done, and that video's already been done a number of times. And that video's already been done a number of times by people that had this phone during the embargo period pre-release, so they could spend a week getting all of their beautiful panning and tracking shots of like useless rectangular slabs, but with beautiful depth of field on 4 and 8K cameras. So what do? I'm legitimately asking, what is it that you want to see, and what should we try and cover? Obviously, I'm going to do an audio review. Obviously, I'm going to crank into that camera. But those are Patreon exclusives. I'm not going to put those up public anymore because that's way too much work to try and put that up on YouTube's current monetization schedule or demonetization schedule. I just had another round of videos suddenly approved for monetization that I never got notifications that they had ever been demonetized. So I'm not going to risk that with a video that takes me literally 2 weeks, over a period of 2 weeks, takes me days of work to cobble together, put together, analyze all the photos, and make the analysis. So that's kind of where I'm a little bit stuck. Like, what's interesting about a View 20 in light of a conversation that's kind of been done? So I'll be curious to hear what you have to say. Obviously, I've already done some benchmarking on it. I've done video rendering tests. I did a quick little speed run opening like humongous Office files, and I did an image stabilization test. I need to do my battery benchmarking. I'm still doing all that stuff that I do in my other videos, but I'm finding it just less and less and less and less exciting to talk about something when I can already go out on YouTube and find a dozen videos that have already sort of tread some of those topics. So we'll move on from there. From Fat Produce, I'll watch more broad topic videos from Linus rather than his reviews. Actually, his tutorial videos and all of his like DIY videos. That's what I really like about Linus. I really do not like the sort of reality show style commentary, and especially when he gets into those reviews, and most of it's mugging to the preconceived notion of someone who absolutely will never appreciate any risk taking. That's what's kind of bothersome to me about the way that he reviews, because it's, you go in with the assumption that something else has already won, so this product cannot win. And that's where I especially was frustrated with his Razer phone too. What even is a gaming phone? And you're like, well, you know, you can answer that question. Yeah, there's an answer. It's the same way that you can say, well, what is a gaming laptop? I mean, you can play games on a Dell Inspiron. Why do you need gaming laptops? And then everything's sort of designed to give you the wackiest and goofiest thumbnail on your YouTube video. That kind of review, where it's not a review, it's a comparison, it's sort of a sneaky comparison, is already problematic. And that's exactly what I don't want to do with the View 20. It's not like I want to just stack a bunch of like, well, let's compare the View 20 to the OnePlus 6T and declare a winner. And you're like, no, meh, Mr. PUBG on Periscope, do a drop test? There's no way. I mean, it's all like wrapped in curved glass with like this teeny little metal edge. I think we can declare that the foregone conclusion. We can take that one for granted. There's no way any of this current crop of high-end phones is anywhere near drop test. That's just gadget destruction porn. I also just don't enjoy gadget destruction porn. Some really fun people in the chat: Harry's Beauty, Fabio Bruni, Tech Valor, Abraham Artemis, Versus K, VSK, Tech Leathercraft, Steve DeRoche. You should do some Gadget Boy. I am actually planning on doing Gadget Boy for the beginning of my Razer video, because you guys watching the or listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, what I want to do is like a 30-second wrap up of all of the major points. You're like, what? And it's got bezels, and oh my gosh, rectangular form factor. It hurts my hands when I hold it because of the corners. I think I'm gonna try and smash that into the beginning, and then do like all right, is everyone or all the normies gone? Okay, let's chat, and then we can actually talk about some of my my pros and cons with the Razer phone too. The big video, and I'm slowly piecing it together. It's just taking longer than I thought. I posted the script, and that script has already been altered a little bit on the Patreon, but it's my experiences in trying to create a good game streaming platform from mobile devices. So if you want to stream a mobile game or stream gameplay from a mobile device, has been a fascinating challenge. So that's I'm hoping to have that out by the end of the month, but that's going to be sort of a magna opus video. Like, it's going to get 1,000 views. No one's really going to care, because again, the zeitgeist is there is no mobile gaming worth talking about. But it started out as something that was good. It should have been simple. This should have been like a 2-minute video. You plug this in here and you do this and you use this app and everything's great. And instead now it's like, well, if you have this kind of phone, this is what you need to do. And if you want to take that up a notch, you need a different phone. So I'm really digging in deep there. Steve DeRoche, dab on your haters. Oh, God, I'm going to have to do that at some point, aren't I? Sexy Potatoes, drop test and repair on phones like the Moto X4 that offer real replacement parts. Got to give props to Motorola for committing to supporting repairability. Actually, I don't even need to drop and repair. I mean, like, destroy a phone. If I just give it to my wife for a month, she'll probably wreck it for me. I still have. I need to get it from her. I should probably do that on her old Moto G5. See if I can put that together and replace the screen that she smashed up. So we'll have to see if I can pull that off. All right, let's get into some news. We've got a lot of news to cover, and I'm going to try and not ramble in between each story too much, because I also want to try just a slightly new segment on kind of a recap of what we've been doing on the Reddit, our glowing rectangles. We'll kind of use that in the midpoint of this podcast just to shake some things up. But we're already 20 minutes, and that was supposed to be housekeeping. I'm legitimately curious what your thoughts might be. So if you're listening to this after the fact, if you can hit me up on social media, shoot me an email off of SomeGadgetGuy.com, something like that. What do we do when you are a reviewer who lives in the B team or C team and is not getting products during embargo periods? I still have things that I want to say about this phone, and I still want to have conversations about this phone. I think it's a cool phone. I think it's a really cool phone. I'm really excited about the camera. The video is really interesting, what they're doing with image stabilization. There are some things to talk about, but what do I do to frame that in a way that it's worth it for me to spend the time making videos on a product, knowing that I'm going to get trashed when it comes to SEO on YouTube? And I hate having to make that the consideration, but I can't spend a week cutting video on a gadget only to have that get completely buried, and get 1,000 views on it. And I hate that that's part of the conversation, but that is part of the conversation, because it's tough doing this and then seeing like 10 comments like, oh, why are we talking about this? You're 2000 and late. So Fabio Bruni, next step on the review, feel in the hand, drop test, front facing camera test. My personal hell. Hold on. I'll do. It's got like kind of a curved glass back. I really like, it's fingerprints, but the way that the V's do this, it's not too bad. It's got really pretty light reflection. It feels really nice in the hand. Unlike last year's Honors products, which were made out of razor blades and rusty rebar, this is a phone that doesn't completely slice open your palm when you're using it. So that's like really cool. I like that. If I have to have extended conversations about hole punches on screens, like that's the exciting development that we're going to have. It's better than a teardrop notch. It's better than a unibrow. I still want screens on the back of my phones instead. That would be way more functional. Yo, Viper! Viper dropping fire in the live chat. Excellent. Aussie Beach Bum, I've been waiting for the potato review part 2 after the hype. Well, there was potato review, and then there was sweet potato review. I need to find some other kind of tuber, I feel, for potato review 3, The Reckoning. We'll have to see what I can come up with. I don't know. I mean, that's another thing too. I need to start planning now if I'm gonna have an April Fool's video out. Dag, yo. Time flies. All right, news. Let's get on to it. First bit of news. This is something not cell phone related, which makes me very excited. This story out of the New York Times. You call that meat? Not so fast, cattle ranchers say. From the article. This is written by Nathaniel Popper. The Cattle Ranchers and Farm Bureau of America are not giving up their hold on the word meat without a fight. In recent weeks, beef and farming industry groups have persuaded legislators in more than a dozen states to introduce laws that would make it illegal to use the word meat to describe burgers and sausages that are created from plant-based ingredients or are grown in labs. Just this week, new meat labeling bills were introduced in Arizona and Arkansas. These meat alternatives may look and taste and even bleed like meat, but cattle ranchers want to make sure the new competition can't use the word meat. We're talking about BeyondMeat and Impossible Foods. I still have actually not tried a BeyondMeat burger. I really want to. There was a time I was super strict vegan. It's probably the healthiest I've ever been. Just some dietary issues got in the way when Marie was pregnant with Lex, and we couldn't have like 2 completely separate diets. And short story, incredibly long, I'm not super strict vegan anymore, but was doing really well. It's probably the best my psoriasis has ever done. I was getting outside, getting way more sunshine, vitamin D. It was good times. I digress. The thing that's really frustrating about all of this is, yet again, sort of an example of a top industry being able to curry influence with elected officials in a way that can dictate the course of our supposedly fair and free market system. The word meat has historically been used to describe any kind of mass of a substance of a plant or an animal. Like there is vegetable matter where you talk about the meat of a mushroom, or the meat of another substance. It's reactive and sort of rewrites part of our linguistic history to claim that meat as a noun has only ever been used to describe animal byproducts. So this is not my argument that people should be vegan or should be vegetarian, but we are facing a number of issues environmentally and through health in the way that our diets contribute to various issues globally. There was a phenomenal what's that? Oh, I need to look up the podcast. It's a science podcast. It's like Facts Versus or something like that. Hold on, let me get into my subscriptions here. Where is it? Science Versus. Sorry, not Facts Versus. Science Versus. It's one of the Gimlet Media podcasts. They did a 2-parter on on milk. And this is also in the New York Times article too, saying like, oh, almonds can't make milk. Milk only comes from mammary glands of animals. Sure, I guess. I mean, we're finding that later in life, humans really do start losing the ability to properly process lactose. I mean, if you can hang on to that, if you have the genetics for it, awesome, go for it. But I'm definitely falling into that camp of, you know, legit animal dairy products are messing me up now. But when we look at the environmental impacts, you look at dairy and animal products, well, that contributes to a significant source of deforestation, land use, water use, byproducts for cow farts in our atmosphere. All of these things do add up to having a much larger and much more significant environmental impact on the surrounding area and the planet in general than any type of nut-based milk or plant-based meat product. And because these things can be processed in labs and factories with far less impact, they also could prove, once you get manufacturing up to scale, Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods could be way cheaper to produce for the environment. Again, like lab-grown meat too. You know, all of these things that you can have a product that doesn't come from the slaughtering of animals, has way less impact on the environment, and you could probably design it to be just a little healthier. I don't know. I mean, often I kind of feel like health impacts are more quantity, not substance. Like, you know, just the American diet is way bigger than it needs to be. So that's the frustration for me is watching this industry fight against trends with consumers that we are looking for alternatives. And not all of us. It's not like steaks go away. And it's not like I'm advocating for steaks to go away. But I think it's ridiculous that their plan to block this is to confuse the marketplace, interrupt the branding and trademarks of companies like Beyond Meat, and then fight for this idea that resonates with a certain voting demographic that's really out more. They're not really interested in solving problems. They're just more out to create chaos and confusion in a marketplace to their benefit. So it's super frustrating. And especially like, you know, they try and like split hairs. Well, we don't have a problem with someone calling something a burger, but meat, oh, you can't call anything meat. When literally like every single cooking show, if you're like, oh, you slice into the meatiest part or the meat of this plant or the meat of this mushroom, like they don't get to brand a word like meat just because now they're facing some actual competition. Matt, we got some comments on this. Excellent. Okay, here, let me scroll back up through. Fabio Bruni, gosh, you're making me hungry. From Fat Produce, if lab-grown meat takes off and rural Missourians don't have a replacement cash crop, then we're screwed. See, and I think that's part of the issue that we run into is trying to imagine what the end game is. So there's a slippery slope argument that I feel is valid. If we stop the mass industrialization of our food as it pertains to animal products, like the huge industry, I mean, think about how kind of gross it is when a single cheeseburger at a fast food restaurant came from dozens of cows. That's how much animal muscle and fat and stuff is ground up and shipped out. That, you know, it's not like you got a really great steak, ground that up, and made a burger out of that, right? Not the way that hamburger is mass produced and industrialized. It's kind of disgusting. There is one potential end game solution where dairy farmers and cattle ranchers are significantly impacted. The flip side of that conversation is our current system is unsustainable. Like environmentally, from health impacts, every piece of it is accelerating and growing and sustained at a rate which we can't keep up with and harms the environment. So cattle ranchers get to profit off of scenarios where we as taxpayers and governments have to figure out ways to fix their problems. And they often benefit from things like different types of farming grants and subsidies. And we're subsidizing their success while at the same time they're impeding sort of a free market competitor. And I have a problem with. My little spark of libertarianism just fired up. What I would want to see is, let's see some competition in the marketplace, because I think a majority of people are probably still going to turn up their nose in the near term to fake meat or even lab-grown meat, because Americans are extremely conservative and they don't like experimenting with new things anyway. But as these things start to take on a little bit, we should see some competition. And that, unfortunately, needs to impact things like farming. We need to see some sort of market or course correction in our farming. And, maybe Missouri will also look at returning to hemp and cannabis as cash crops, right? There are some other solutions for what we could do with huge acreage and supporting the business initiatives of farmers, and then moving them away from an industrialized food plant processing economy. But we have to get there first. And I think we're a long ways off from the impacts of that being immediately identifiable on farms. This is just the opening shots of an industry that sees the writing on the wall. It's kind of like the oil and gas industry, too. This is going to be, I think, historically dark times for the United States when we look back historically. And, the State of the Union has this proud accomplishment of America becoming like the leader in fossil fuels at a time where the rest of the world is saying, hey, climate catastrophe is on the horizon. From Exarchus, tip, never consume Soylent. Soylent Green. Woo! I saw that movie way too late. Again, it's one of those things. It's like the end of Planet of the Apes. The second you say you're going to watch that movie, people run out of their way to give you the spoiler line. From the Nitpicker, I tried almond milk once. I found it disgusting. I kind of like almond milk. Especially if I can find a good unsweetened version of it. The problem I have with a lot of nut milks is the chemicals they use to give it some kind of flavor. Like if it's vanilla, there is such a terrible chemically aftertaste where it tastes like powdered coffee creamer. But here in the United States, we have a grocery store called Trader Joe's, and they sell a soy coffee creamer, which is simple, clean, just a little bit of sweet, and it's one of the only non-dairy creamers I've ever found that actually blends with your coffee. It doesn't just sort of become a weird emulsion, like with like pockets of creamer kind of floating to the top of your coffee. The Trader Joe's soy is phenomenal, and it doesn't suffer from any of those weird flavorings that ruin whatever it is that you're using it with it. From Fat Produce, I think the naming aspect of this is a symptom of what lab-grown meat will do economically to rural America. I'm not saying there aren't concerns, but I also feel like the market needs to adapt and consumers need to also change some of their behavior. And again, we need to find more sustainable economic business. We need to find more sustainable business practices. And then also, if this has a positive outcome on health, then it's another thing that we kind of need to take a hard look at whether or not we're going to support it. From Sexy Potatoes, Excharis, coconut milk. Coconut milk is pretty good too. Actually, there's also a really good oat milk isn't bad either. But that one, if you're gluten free, that one won't work. But again, I'm having a hard time with any of these lobbying efforts. Oh, you can't call it milk because almonds don't have mammaries. And you're like, that's terrible. We need to move on. And from Marshall Clappert, water is a big problem in California with climate change. And that was another thing. If you check the science versus, they always put links to their sources. If you check that out, there is literally no, we have a problem in California with the way that we produce almonds. Almonds are an extremely water intensive crop. if we were to switch to almond milk, even with almonds being water intensive, it would still be far more environmentally sound and less of an impact on our resources and land than dairy milk. So again, it's not that dairy milk should go away. It's that if we could incorporate more of these other products into mainstream diets, then we would see significantly positive outcomes for our impact on infrastructure and resources. That's a good thing, and we would also see positive impacts on situations with pollution and climate. From Race Lever, rice milk too. Again, there are some really solid alternatives that we could be examining. So let's move on. I'm getting Jim Yole is calling me out on my woefully ignorant comments without actually researching topics on science, but he hasn't actually supplied any counterpoints. He's just trying to point people to his blog. So maybe check out Jim Yole's blog. He might have some good counterpoints to some of my commentary on stuff that apparently I'm woefully ignorant on. Moving right along. Who wants to talk about the Galaxy S10? Anyone? No one? New Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus images leaked unwatermarked. Wow, you can totally use these images and not worry about watermarks on them. Coming straight out of the leaker of all leakers. I'm sorry. I pulled up the image. I meant to properly credit. This is from Evan Bloss. So Evan Bloss tweeted these out, Galaxy S10 Plus unwatermarked, and then there's the actual photo. And this is here. So this is the Galaxy S10, the Galaxy S10 Plus. It's got a hole punch with a double camera up front. Still got forehead and chin bezels, but closer to an all-screen device. Triple camera on the back. And of course, we do not see any rear-mounted fingerprint sensor because it's going to be pretty well assumed that it's going to be under the display. So that's pretty cool. I kind of feel like this is another byproduct of the current sort of industry sort of leaking and talking phones to death before they're properly released. I kind of feel like we're going to have a good idea of what this gadget has to offer long before Samsung ever does their official unboxed ceremony on it. So what do we think ballpark price for a Galaxy S10 Plus is going to be? My vote is $999. I think it's going to creep up to the Note price. The smaller Galaxy S10 that only has 2 cameras and not 3 cameras, I think will probably be around the $799 to $899, somewhere in that price territory. And then we'll see the Note later in the year break, $1,100 or $1,200. I think we're going to see within $200 price bumps from S10 to S10 Plus to Note. What do you guys think? From Race Lever. Wow, it looks like a smartphone. Amazing. Doomer231, I'm more interested in the new 21:9 aspect Sony phones. Cool. From Talks with TJ, why does Samsung focus on camera and notch size instead of new front-facing screen design? Actually, Talks with TJ, I think, in part, the Galaxy S10 is not really going to be the exciting 10th anniversary Galaxy device. I think instead, Samsung is going to try and wow us with something in the second half of the year, probably alongside the Note launch. It's going to be more about like folding phones. You've seen the Flex Pi or Flexi Pad or whatever it's called. You've seen some from prototypes from Xiaomi, and Huawei is probably going to announce something foldable. But now that Samsung's doing it, you can take flexible phones seriously with the Galaxy X or something like that. From Marcel Clapper, will you be in San Francisco at the Galaxy S10 presentation February 20th? No, unfortunately. That is actually going to be the day... the presentation is the day before one of my first revisits to the Newegg studio, in between some of the work that we've been doing to fix up the studio at Newegg. So I'll be here because I'm booked to go in and do some consulting and some work. I'm getting real itchy because there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about, and we've got some shoot days finally scheduled for Newegg. So I want to get back to that. I really want to get back in on that Newegg gig. So unfortunately, I won't be able to take any trips around for MWC or any of the announcements around MWC. Excuse me. From the Nitpicker, I just wish the battery life on the Exynos version wouldn't be terrible, but as the years before it looks highly unlikely. Yeah, it is kind of interesting where Samsung's chipsets set like this great high bar. I even going back to like the Hummingbird era of chipsets, and now it seems like everyone's just sort of given. I mean, like there's the Kirin, so you have Kirin, Exynos, and then the Qualcomm Snapdragon, but most of the industry has sort of based all of their phone optimization expertise, obviously, on the one chipset that gets the most global support. Abraham Artemis, yeah, also assuming that this is going to be a $1,000 phone. Fat Produce. Samsung is following Apple's iPhone XS and XS Max strategy, and they are going to have the same issues as Apple in sales in this year, in my opinion. They had the same issue as Apple in 2018. You know, it wasn't that all these companies had bad years. It's just we're seeing clear data that rates of adoption and smartphone ownership are leveling off. People are trying to hold on to their gadgets longer. Manufacturers are trying to encourage us to flip phones more aggressively. We've lost in the United States some of the major screw points of 2-year contracts. Now we have more like phone leasing programs. But it's still, I don't see clear data that those are encouraging people to really move their phones more quickly. So you look at like, T-Mobile's program is not really a very good consumer-friendly plan where you pay, you have a down payment and you pay taxes, and then you also have to pay like your first month's lease. So it's like a phone leasing program. And then when you flip your phone, you pay a down payment, your first month's lease, and taxes. Whereas you just saved up to buy the phone outright and then sold that phone on like Swappa, you probably be doing a lot better than this allegedly really convenient flip your phone a whole bunch of times program from T-Mobile. And T-Mobile's seems to be the best, which is not really great for the rest of the industry. Marcel Clappert, hopefully S10 plus 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs internal storage. I think that seems likely. I'll be curious to see what we hold on to if Samsung will make another move away from micro SD cards. I'll be really excited to see maybe a next generation DeX, continuing this idea of you can use your phone to replace aspects of your computing. That could be kind of cool. From Incumbents on Periscope. Mr. PUBG and Incumbents on Periscope neither think that this is going to be worth an upgrade over an S9 Plus. Again, I'll be curious to see what Samsung has to offer, but I kind of feel like even in this day and age, as long as you're somewhere around a Qualcomm 821, most people are going to be fine with that level of processing power getting through their day. I pick up my LG V30, and it's got a Snapdragon 835. That hardware does fine in the beginning of 2019. Not only fine, like it's a nice, snappy, powerful phone. It has great camera and audio capabilities. Like nothing holds me back. So just telling me that I'm getting a few more giggle flips and that like my Geekbench scores are now 50% higher doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Here. Case in point, I'm going to ruin some of my Honor View 20 commentary because I don't know what I'm going to do for the review of this video. This so far has been hitting some of the highest synthetic benchmark scores of any phone that I've reviewed, right? This is even slightly outperforming my Mate 20. I don't have a Mate 20 Pro, but it's the Mate 20. So my Mate 20 has 6 gigs of RAM. This has 8 gigs of RAM. Geekbench seems to like that, just that little bit more. My scores have been just a little bit higher. If I go to render a video, which is pretty intense for a smartphone, we're talking a high bitrate UHD video, 30 frames per second. This is tied with my Razer Phone 2 and is only a second faster in rendering a 1-minute video than my OnePlus 6T. Okay, not a lot of people rendering video, I get that. So why don't we try and do something like stabilize a video? You can use the Google Photos app to stabilize video. It's really good. You should do that, especially before you upload your videos to WorldStar. Stabilizing video, this phone loses to devices like, it's faster than the Mate 20 again, but it still doesn't quite hang with OnePlus 6T, Razer Phone 2, for this impressive synthetic benchmark score. Office apps opens just slightly faster. If I push open on a 30 megabyte ridiculously large Excel spreadsheet, this opens, I think, a second faster than if you open that spreadsheet on a Razer Phone 2. That's great. I don't feel like anyone's really held back by that slightly slower spreadsheet processing on a Razer Phone 2. So again, when I really look at what the lifestyle aspects are, I have to kick this into a high performance mode, which definitely drains the battery faster. And then I get comparable gaming performance as to what I get out of a Razer Phone 2 or out of a OnePlus 6T. And that's really good, especially knowing that this is not going to be a ridiculously expensive phone if and when it launches in the United States. That's very nice. But if all we have to offer, a Galaxy S10, maybe we get a wide-angle shooter, I'd be happy to see Samsung's take on a wide-angle shooter. I don't care about hole punch. Hole punch is slightly less disruptive than a notch, but it's still a hole in your screen. A slightly faster chipset, maybe potential for 5G. I don't know. I don't think Samsung's going to be riding the 5G bandwagon on the S10. These things to me don't speak of I desperately need to be on the bleeding edge of smartphone tech. They were like, oh, well, maybe I've been on a phone for 3 years and it's time for me to flip it. And like to Andrew's point, I think that is going to have a continued effect on the market that we're going to start seeing this stuff slow down. Sorry, we were talking S10 Plus. There are a lot of comments moving through here. People making fun of me saying giggle flips. It's my second favorite fake dad malpropism after megapixels. From Sharil Abdul Rahman, I wonder if the Google Photos stabilization app is not optimized for Kieran. Entirely possible. Maybe. But again, it's what we're talking about is like a horsepower versus software optimization thing. I don't know how to judge that. It's really like, you're probably correct. There just isn't another test that I can run like it. And I use the Google Photos stabilization quite a bit. So that's a real world kind of comparison, or real world usage is what I'm trying to get at. From Tech Leathercraft, Google Photos supposed to be cloud-based processing, I thought, not hardware-based. Not when it's on the phone. If you image stabilize on the phone, that is based on what your phone can do. And there are very reliable and replicatable tests where you run different chipsets from different manufacturers through those tests. If it were only cloud-based, then it would really only depend on your data connection. And that's not reflective of what I've been testing over the last year. It's why I've been using it, is because you can reliably predict performance based on chipset and RAM against the different manufacturers there. So there has to be some kind of hardware component for how that's processed on device. Now, there might be a cloud component in what Google is doing. And we know that when you upload to Google and you go through a browser, there is also a cloud plugin. But the fact that you end up with a 4K video on device that has been stabilized means to me, I don't see any evidence that it's only a cloud-based performance. All right. We're already an hour in. I've got a ton of news to cover. Let's run through these fast, okay? Coming up, I know there's a little bit of a lag or a delay. Saying goodbye to Google Fiber in Louisville made me super, super sad. This is from the Google Fiber official blog, saying goodbye to Louisville. Over the years, we've had a lot of hellos, or more accurately, hey there's. Our first was 2012, big hello to Kansas City. Today, we're saying goodbye to one of our fiber cities, and it ain't easy. After a lot of analysis, we've made the tough decision to leave Louisville, Kentucky. As we told our customers today, we will be turning off the network on April 15th, and their next 2 months of service are on us. We'll work with our customers and partners to minimize disruption, and we're committed to doing right by the community, which welcomed us as we tested methods of delivering high-speed internet in new and different ways. That last part is really the kind of the most important part of this piece right here. We tested methods of delivering high-speed internet in new and different ways. So, apparently, Google did not properly zone and shallow trench their fiber solution for Louisville's requirements. And the costs of redoing that work were so high that Google is now just going to leave. I think this is one of the most upsetting aspects of where we are currently at in this sort of telecommunications infrastructure. ISPs have locked the market for so long, and consumers have just sort of acclimated to terrible service at high prices with zero competition in many of their areas, that now that Google is going to leave Louisville, it sets the consumer skepticism of competition even higher. If someone were to walk in now and say, hey, we want to also offer a competing service, people are going to go, nah, probably not. You're going to leave in another 2 years, just like Google did. And that totally chills the market. This is sort of another example for me also of Google playing with something and not really having the fortitude to stick it out. We want to see them grow and develop and manage what's going on here. We want to see them improve products and be a competitive force and convince other local municipalities and other local districts, state, cities, that they have something that they can offer, and convince those areas to start pruning some of the legislation and some of the local laws that prevent competition. I know we're going to have this stupid national conversation about 5G, but 5G is really not going to extend to most of the population outside of major urban areas in a way that improves performance and delivers new products and new services. So much of the country can't even get good, stable, fast 4G. They light up LTE on their towers, but it doesn't really exist. That's not really a thing. So 5G isn't really going to be much better because they don't have the backhaul. And that's why we still need hardline cable connections to the home. 5G can't also make up the differences for things like our energy grid. Again, if you care about your country's security, one of the things, like when we were in the middle of the government shutdown, there were numerous law enforcement advisories about the potential threat of cyber attacks on our energy grid during the government shutdown. We were at our most vulnerable in the history of cyber warfare, and that wasn't really talked about because that's the geeky, nerdy stuff, right? The main news media doesn't discuss those types of situations where if there was a coordinated cyber attack against a half dozen major pipelines in our energy grid, you could shut down a huge chunk of this country for weeks. That's the reality of where we're at right now. And revising our energy grid goes hand in hand with supplying fiber to home. You need that real-time, back and forth energy conversation, and the only way to do that is with a big, fast data pipe. Private companies are not getting that job done. And now we're in Louisville, we're losing a competitor. Google Fiber just walking away. From Sharil Abdul-Rahman, Google is following their MO. Intro something, let people feel comfortable using it, pull the plug a few years later. software, hardware, and now fiber. Oh, you Google. From Aditya Anil, the scary thing is the same company owns Android, and once they get a decent working Fuchsia, will they abandon Android as well, not allowing consumers time to switch? Abraham Artemis following that same conversation. Google, wait until Google dumps Android. Oh, the horror. Tech Leathercraft, RIP Inbox, and Fiverr. What are you guys using? I forget who posted it. Oh, it was a great article. I want to say it was Android Authority. I can't remember. Talking about they did a survey with their users, and no one installs third-party email clients, and it erupted into this conversation on Reddit and on their own comments about, well, I love this email client, and K9 does great. I like Outlook. I mean, like, I'm seriously considering now just dumping Gmail and switching to another email client. We'll have to see. So ultimately, Google is going to dump Android at some point. It's mixed up in other people's IP. They're in constant litigation about what software they're using and what processes they're using, and they want something completely under their lock and key. Eventually, at some point, Google has to pivot more towards Apple. Apple is currently pivoting more towards Google with Android-like services, becoming more of a service-based company, making more money off of their services, not just their hardware sales. Both of these companies are meeting in the middle. So one of the ways that Google is going to rein in some of the issues they have with their platform is by locking their platform down. From Tech Leathercraft, especially after the EU's lawsuit, Google will separate Android and Fuchsia. Absolutely on point. That's the best segue, because my very next story, Google now pays more in EU fines than it does in taxes. Excuse me. Sorry, I have an itchy nose. Firm was slapped with $5.1 billion worth of penalties in 2018. This is from the Inquirer.net. From the article written by Graham Burton. Excuse me. Internet giant Google now pays more in European fines than it does in taxes, the firm's fourth quarter earnings have revealed. Google owner Alphabet Company reported Q4 revenues up 22% to $39.28 billion, while annual revenues were up 23% to $136.8 billion. The company also took the time to separate out European Commission fines. It is in its consolidated statements of income in the company's accounts, these increased from $2.7 billion in 2017 to $5.1 billion in 2018, with a further $50 million already set to be added to that bill for its first quarter in 2019 accounts. That compares to a provision for income taxes of just $4.2 billion for 2018. So they're spending, almost $1 billion more in fines than they are in taxes. Aditi Anil, hashtag best segue ever. Tech Leathercraft, LOL, transition achieved. I don't know, man. That is so much money. They're I mean, like $40 billion in revenue per quarter. Annual revenue, $136.8 billion. That is absolutely crazy. I mean, like, those numbers are astronomical and are just crazy. And when you look at like what they actually are able to pay, and we sort of ignore the fact that there's this massive corporate infrastructure of offloading profits to certain parts of the world so that you can kind of hide monies away in strategic ways. And then you just wait for a government to cave in on some sort of like tax amnesty so that you can repatriate that cash. Again, this might be the phrase of the podcast. Like, this is unsustainable. So eventually something's got to shift or something's got to change. Especially while at that situation, I've got another Google story. Let's jump right into that. Here, let me go back into screen share. Google removes government-banned sites from Russian search results, report says. The search giant deleted about 70% of the blacklisted sites, according to a local newspaper in Russia. Google has begun to tweak its search results in Russia to remove websites that have been blacklisted by the government's communications agency, according to a report Wednesday by Vedomosti, a local newspaper. Since 2017, the government has required search engines in the country to delete sites banned by the agency. Some of those search results include sites on child pornography, drugs, and suicide, but some critics have also accused the agency of pushing state censorship, according to the Moscow Times. This is what's funny. Google was fined $7,500 in November 2018 for not complying with the regulation. So apparently Google is also paying more in fines in Russia than they are in taxes. Take that, Google. $7,500. This is going to be another very sensitive topic in 2019. I am not properly equipped. I'm going to be talking about the news stories that are coming out in regards to this, but in light of Reddit receiving $150 million in financial backing from Chinese interests, Google reportedly working on different search products for different parts of the world, which is kind of a dog whistle for, are they going to censor in places like China if they try and release a product? This is going to be an increasingly important tech topic, which I'm only going to be able to cover in these types of snippets of news. And hopefully much, much smarter people than I will be able to dig into more of the ramifications of what this does to the spread of information, what this does to conversation. I don't know if you guys are listening to other podcasts like the Sam Harris podcast. Let me pull up my podcast catcher again. Because he just recently had, it's the February 5th podcast, number 148 from Sam Harris. He had Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Square and of Twitter. And it's a really interesting conversation about the impossible situation we have in satisfying sort of free and open conversation with some sentiment of First Amendment mixed into a private platform, opposite a community that also needs to be policed and have guidelines. I disagreed with a lot of what Jack Dorsey had to say, but I felt it was rationally delivered, and it wasn't just oh, we've got to ban people that disagree with me kind of knee-jerk reactionary censorship policy from a platform like Twitter. It's a very interesting and it's a very enlightening 2-hour discussion. I would highly recommend throwing it on and taking a listen through it, because these are the types of challenges. Like I've talked about Facebook in the past too. They face an impossible situation. Ultimately, the Facebook experiment to me will be a losing scenario. You cannot filter, police, and sanitize the insane amount of data that's coming through Facebook servers. You cannot properly secure that insane amount of data when the whole purpose of a social network is to share and disseminate information. It's not possible. We have to find other metaphors for interaction online. And I don't know that, I think we're still a generation of consumer users away from achieving that. But we're in for some really dicey situations here, where now that these mega corporations that have all of our data are trying to engage in commerce in other countries, they're going to have to defend their market position by engaging in business practices that we're probably not going to like. So I'm not surprised if Google is facing Russian issues, especially with like a Russian Ministry of Information blacklist of sites. The Russian government has made 175 requests for the company to remove banned sites. Then I think this is going to be an increasing part of the reliability of the information that we find and is served to us. And I don't know that there is a solution to that. I don't know what that solution looks like. And whoever figures it out is going to be insanely wealthy. But right now, the reactive response, we're going to put out everything until someone complains. And now we're going to examine that claim. And then we're going to say whether or not that this is good for the platform. Again, unsustainable. We can't keep doing that. Let's see. Aditya Nil, Tech Leathercraft, replying to Tech Leathercraft, the dude from Tech Alter was tweeting about it yesterday. Again, that's another YouTube channel everyone should be following. Tech Alter is phenomenal. Let's see. Oh, and a couple other conversations just about anyone on audio. Sharil Abdul Rahman, in Russia, Google finds you. Fat Produce, Google clearly has no problems with working with governments that censor their own people. And again, there is a regional problem. Like, Google is a corporation designed to provide as much value for their shareholders as possible. If there is a market opportunity to do business in Russia, according to a more conservative financial outlook, they have every legal obligation, and the courts have kind of ruled on this, to try and maximize profits for their investors. So I guess that's what they need to do. If Russia says you've got to censor this stuff, then you need to censor this stuff. But something that should totally not be censored is this was the most requested topic, which is hilarious because I've been really cranky about 5G. Let me click back into screen share and go here. From my former gadget blogging home, Pocket Now, Sprint sues AT&T over using misleading 5G branding. An article by Tony Anton Denage. You probably remember how AT&T rebranded its 4G LTE to 5GE, 5G Evolution, a change that was also included in the beta of iOS 2.2. Basically, not much changes except the icon. Well, it appears that Sprint does not like the move, which generated plenty of criticism, and decided to sue AT&T late Thursday, according to a Reuters report. Sprint said a survey showed 54% of AT&T's customers believed their 5GE network is the same as or better than a 5G network, and 43% believed that if they buy an AT&T phone today, it would be capable of running 5G, and those numbers are terrible. AT&T did not comment on the matter, yet Sprint and Verizon are both planning on releasing 5G-capable smartphones in the summer and in the first half of the year, respectively. And we talked about this, it was either last week or the week before, where AT&T executives were proud of the market-disrupting conversation that people were having surrounding this branding change. Their faux 5G. Faux G was great when we had the same thing that AT&T did with 4G before they had an LTE network up and running. They just had like fancy HSPA and like called it 4G because it's 4G speeds. And this is exactly why I am not excited about the current implementation and future rollout strategies for 5G. It will not benefit consumers in the near term. In fact, even in the medium term, I seriously doubt we're going to see any better products, services, or solutions out of this network rush that we're going to be seeing. Let's see. Tech Leathercraft. Yeah, I thought it was ironic how YouTubers that review phones wouldn't want to talk about it. Mouse brain tumors with 3G signals. Wonder how 5G would impact us and our brains. I am not one of those people. I how do I want to phrase this? I have yet to see. So I'm torn on the issue of health and wireless networks. I've yet to see compelling evidence in peer-reviewed and replicatable studies that this stuff is having a negative impact on health. I also feel this stuff has evolved and has been rolled out way faster than the scientific community's ability to study it. I am sort of equally split between those two aspects of the current implementation of wireless technologies in various markets around the world. Technological progress is happening way faster than politics or science can catch up with, But at the same time, the data that we have seen so far in how we can reproduce some of the negative claims or negative aspects of this technology, I haven't seen that compelling push. I haven't seen that data that really lands the fear that we should have over this. But that's also one of the things that makes me extremely frustrated about 5G is that it just seems like such a terribly inefficient and expensive solution to roll out. The way that we do this, like, it's a shorter microwave, it's a smaller tower footprint. That to me doesn't speak of progress. What would be more exciting is talking about gigabit LTE with better building penetration, longer, better connectivity, and spreading out cell phone towers in a way that really benefits the consumer, leads to fewer dropout zones, fewer areas where we have problems. That's what I want. I want to see good backhaul servicing more rural customers that maybe have to rely on cell phone signals for their main data connectivity and getting them up to speed. You know, again, I mentioned we drive through New Mexico often. You go through Gallup, New Mexico, near the Arizona border. I mean, it's a town. It's a small little city, and you get LTE as soon as you're within the city limits, and it's not fast at all. But, you know, it's like you're connected to a really great router and you're still plugged into dial-up behind that router. From Doomer231, the E in 5G, E stands for fake. That's hilarious. From Tech Leathercraft, I think 5G is supposed to be at every block, like close proximity. I don't think it's that tight, but it's pretty close. And again, where a community, remember when San Francisco was trying to do like community Wi-Fi? They were going to put like routers and repeaters on every stoplight. I don't remember exactly what the layout was. And then Verizon sued them because how can you have any kind of public infrastructure for something that was mostly paid for with public monies? That's, if you're going to do that, I kind of wish it wasn't 5G. There were all these tests. I remember Google Campus was working on like wide area Wi-Fi at one point. You know, like this would have been so much better. Do phone calls over data. Now we have like voice over LTE, but years before we were already working on solutions like that probably would have been better. Moving on. I want to take just a little quick break from excuse me. I want to take just a little quick break from news. We have some Apple stories, a Facebook story, and a gaming story. Again, some continued coverage on gaming. But I want to talk real quick about the experiment that we've been having on Reddit. So I've been kind of popping into this podcast to talk briefly about social media news, how I'm trying to find a way or a platform, creating a platform to help smaller YouTubers or YouTubers who just deserve more attention link share, link farm, and build more of an audience. And the beginning of the year, I took sort of a hard look at the Reddit that I had started, r glowing rectangles, and wanted to start changing how that Reddit worked, that subreddit worked. So, I mean, if you guys are familiar with Reddit, you post a news story to an appropriate forum called the subreddit, and then that gets upvoted or downvoted depending on the popularity of the outlet and the popularity or how timely that news is. And then that can have a huge impact where if you go to the Reddit front page, stuff that's voted up really high is getting tons and tons of traffic for the benefit of it having been upvoted really high, and it creates this kind of echo chamber, which can really blow up. It can really create that viral sensation of an important news piece or an important news topic. And so I wanted it to be an organic link farm. I'm not looking to create a subreddit that's going to become a top news resource or front page fodder. But what I'm hoping we can achieve is a kickoff point, So someone who doesn't have a lot of karma, so when you score a lot of points on Reddit because you post something popular, you get taken more seriously in other subreddits. If you create an account today and try and share a post on most major subreddits, they're going to say, no, you don't have any karma. You can't post here. And then if you try and post from an outlet that doesn't have a lot of cred, or if you try and post your own work, like you just created a YouTube channel, you made an awesome review of a phone, you try and post it to our Android, they're going to say, no self-promotion. You can't post here. So I wanted to address some of those issues by creating a platform where someone could load stuff up and have stuff voted on, and then they could build a little karma. Their content could get some traction, some views, and then maybe if something kind of takes off a little bit, it'll be shared to another larger subreddit, find more audience that way. So that initial strategy didn't really work. It's a lot of work for free. I had a team of different moderators that were trying to interact with finding new content. Again, that search is also kind of difficult too. So what I detailed in a previous podcast was saying I created a master list on Patreon of producers, reviewers. It doesn't have to be on YouTube, but right now YouTube is the main source of finding some of this new talent, some of this exciting talent. And I've gotten some great recommendations of people that I now subscribe to and I've been watching. But instead of relying on people to either share their own stuff or moderators to find things to post, I started creating automated filters. So if someone posts a video publicly, it will automatically get sent to this subreddit, and then that Reddit will constantly be updated with fresh and new content. Rather than what was happening was someone, one of the moderators or myself personally would wait like a week and then try and pack a whole bunch of videos in. So you'd see this burst of new posts on the subreddit, and that's a terrible way because that's just annoying. You start spamming people that are actually subscribed. So when I started this, the subreddit had been down to 238, somewhere around there, 237 subscribers. If I go back over into screen share now, I've been running these filters for about a week and a half, and now subscribers are up to 256. We've seen positive growth, and there aren't a lot of upvotes or a lot of comments yet, but we're seeing every single general trend. There's more time on site on the subreddit. There's more subscribers, more interaction, and people are starting to post more organically on their own. So from the last week, top posts, CJ Knows Tech, how to use RGB lighting in your video with 360 RGB and Sansi RGB. One of my new favorite finds, he's a little Apple heavy, but it's nice to have an Apple counterpoint, is mobile photography workflow from Jackson Hayes. And then, of course, rounding out the top three of the hottest stories on our glowing rectangles. Should you buy the Surface headphones from @BoredAtWork? My buddy Anna Bong, you can always count on him for an amazing headphone review. If you're not going to watch my headphone reviews, objectively the best headphone reviews on Reddit, Anna Bong is definitely a close second. And I'll also throw the shout out. He had some great numbers on a series of videos. El Jefe doing some great low-cost headphone reviews too. So this is something that I'm going to keep putting some pressure on, and I'm going to be talking about it more in future episodes of the podcast. I think I might try and make it like a weekly roundup. These were the top stories or the top reviews or the top videos from our glowing rectangles in the middle of every podcast. This new strategy, there's still a lot that I need to clean up. I need to do something with the look of the subreddit. You can kind of tweak it and add banners and graphics and images. And I need to do like flares so people can have like cute little things by their name. But the initial trend of automatically posting when someone puts out a new video has had a significant positive impact for a subreddit that's really, really, really small. And so that type of pressure of having regular content that people can engage with has been a nice improvement to the situation. A lot of people talking about different subreddits. Aditya Anil, our glowing rectangles. From Labar Burton, GameSky do great, just took full control of the business. I have GameSky, GameSky. I don't know. Is it GameSky? I don't know. But he's in there too. Like when he posts, it'll automatically get sent over to the R glowing rectangles. DTNL, what you are doing, Juan, is truly great. I'm pretty awesome. Do my best to contribute to the Reddit as well. Perhaps make your Friday SGG Daily article a promo for the top video on the subreddit. That's a great recommendation. I want to do sort of like a weekly wrap up too. So maybe in addition to the podcast, we can also talk about that on Twitter. I think this is really important because I feel like tech is in such a precious state right now that if we don't have good new voices sort of joining the fray, and we don't have, and some of the sort of the older established, I look at Patrick Norton, Tech Thing. He has like what 40,000 subscribers. Like Patrick Norton is tech legend, and no one is really sharing, talking about, or fronting for Tech Thing, and that's a great show. I mean, it's a really, really well produced show, and you won't find someone as knowledgeable as Patrick Norton putting out content like that inexpensively or for free. And same thing, you know, you look at the This Week in Tech crew, like they actually deserve their podcasts to do well, but when you look at their other platforms and their other engagement, like they deserve to be doing better across all of the various social media and sharing services. So that to me also has to be a part of this conversation too. We need that better diversity, not, well, we've sort of established that there are 3 YouTubers who get like 1 million hits per video and their opinions are the only ones that matter. If you go to like our Android, as much as they complain about certain reviewers or certain news outlets, those are the stories that get voted to the top because they're already really big. So they don't entertain much diversity in finding other people to talk about. And when those individuals are occasionally shared on something like our Android, they're downvoted into oblivion because they're not already popular. Well, that's unsustainable. From Wayudin Wahab, our audio jerk, for some quality audio reviews. I'll have to check that out. From the Nitpicker, someday I'll eventually have to get a Reddit account so I can join Glowing Rectangles. You should, because several of your videos have been doing well on our Glowing Rectangles, and you're just like, whatever, I don't need to contribute or participate. People just love me. So maybe you should drop by sometime and say, hey, you know, thanks for upvoting and sharing my videos on our Glowing Rectangles, because people are. That's my Demir shout out. All right, let's get back to the last couple news stories. Not so much a story. These are both from 9to5Mac. A little exhausting covering the different trials and tribulations of Apple, but now there's a rumor and a report that the 2019 iPhone is reportedly going to stick to the Lightning port and use the same 5-watt USB-A charger in the box. This was written up by Benjamin Mayo. Benjamin Mayo. I have no idea how that last name is pronounced. But from the article, whilst we have yet to see firm evidence on the design of the 2019 iPhone, there has been back and forth rumors about whether the new iPhone would use Lightning or USB-C. Excuse me. Japanese site Mako Takara says that not only will the 2019 iPhone use Lightning, Apple will also continue to bundle the same 5-watt charger and USB-A to Lightning cable in the box. This is seen as a cost-saving measure. It seems that customers wanting faster iPhone charging times will still have to buy accessories like the 12-watt iPad charger. Tech Leathercraft. LOL, Juan throwing shade at Demir. All in love, because Demir is one of my favorite people on the planet. So, I am not terrifically surprised if Apple decides to stick with Lightning. It would make sense to me, excuse me, it would make sense to me that we would maybe see one more generation of the current iPhone 10 form factor and design, one more generation of the 10R, because that just launched. So we would have like a 10RS, a revision year, and that in 2020, we'll see a redesign of the iPhone for something new. That Apple now going to 3 years for their design refreshes, going 3 years in between design refreshes, where it used to be, like number year, S year, number year, S year. Well, they kind of showed with the iPhone 6 through the iPhone 8, with the 6, the 6S, the 7, and the 8, that they could basically recycle the same form factor design and the same manufacturing bugs across 4 generations of phone and still have reasonably strong sales. So I think it's very, very likely that because of the money Apple makes on licensing the Lightning accessory port design, that would be a source of revenue in this dongle world that Apple has created that they would not want to give up. And so my hypothesis is that we're going to see a refresh of the XS and XS Max, a XRS, and that 2020 is going to bring some kind of change, more unifying the platform with USB-C across all product lines. That's my guess. And Marcel Clappert completely agrees with me because we are right. The Sentinel 909, Apple being Apple, carrying on. Sharil Abdul Rahman, courage to still include a 5 amp charger in 2019. It's 5, isn't it 5 watt? What is the amperage on an iPhone charger? I need to get better about memorizing all of the various electrical specs between like power delivery, QC, dash charging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Call back to my shout out for TechAlter. Check out TechAlter's video about Super VOOC charging. That's Oppo's super fast charging, and it's sort of the basis of OnePlus's dash charging. Considering Apple's battery issues and battery throttling based on the and I hate that it's called battery throttling, but performance throttling based on the age or the degradation of the battery, I actually think it's more responsible for Apple to include a slower charger in the box. Apple does not utilize any special faster charging implementation which won't heat up the product for a longer period of time and heat, which will degrade battery components, because we also know iPhones don't utilize any kind of special thermal hardware. Again, I've ranted about this. Like, you can't just complain about a phone feeling warm if it's got special hardware designed to expel heat as efficiently as possible. It should feel warm. We're talking Note 9 or Razer Phone 2. Because iPhones don't do that, I actually think from a business perspective, it is more responsible to have people charge their phones slower and not wear out the internals on their phones at an accelerated rate. I would highly recommend against utilizing a faster charging solution on an iPhone until we know that Apple is doing something to mitigate some of that impact. And that's where Super VOOC and Dash and Huawei's solution also play a significant role in, you can charge a phone way faster, but you've got to do something with the charger and the phone talking to each other in a special way. They give each other a special hug, and then months later, your battery is charged to completion. That needs to be addressed. That needs to be detailed. And because Apple doesn't do that, I don't think it's a wise move to cook your iPhone internals just so that your phone can be charged a little bit faster. Or a lot of bit faster. Apple's current charging solution is really slow. But that's kind of where I feel like that's maybe not a bad thing. But what I'm disappointed in is that we'll be sticking with Lightning connector for yet another year. I'd really like to see Apple move everything over to USB-C. I've been talking about that since USB-C started showing up on phones. It's great is watching people revisit a video I did, USB-C versus Lightning connector. And it's not a very good video. I'll admit, it's not my best. But people have been searching for that now, especially because iPads are using USB-C now. And there needs to be a sort of a consumer education on that. And then also I think Apple can help fix some of the problems with USB-C. That if we're going to have true USB audio implementation, Apple is probably going to be a driving force in creating the standard that everyone else copies and utilizes after that. So that to me would be a very nice perk to have that on a phone and not just on a tablet.
From Fat Produce, I'm betting that Apple sales are still down in 2019 too. Let's see. From Renato Laporte. Meanwhile, Moto G7 Plus will have a 27-watt power delivery charger. I reached out to Motorola. I'm actually really excited to see what they do with the G7, but I was also, again, frustrated by the PR response like, oh, the G7 Plus isn't going to be sold in the United States, so you can't review one. You're like, fine, give me the one with the bigger battery. I'll review that one instead. But it's like, I'm getting really tired of telling people, like, only 30% of my audience comes from North America. Not the United States, North America. I feel like your product is going to get a fair assessment and still be exposed to most of the markets that your company does business in if you send me something that won't directly be sold in a Best Buy. But fine, I'm not going to fight you. And actually, I am really interested in seeing like how the G7 Super Battery Edition works. So it's not much sweat off my brow. Marcel Clappert and At the Nitpicker talking about 3 generations. 3 generations is the right number of generations for a product to really find some solid consumer adoption. From Sharil Abdul Rahman, right now I'm curious on what is Apple focusing for its iPhone development, camera, hardware, or mainly software. I'll be very surprised to see, I'll be pleasantly surprised, not very surprised. I will be pleasantly surprised to see significant departures from what Apple currently does. That would actually be really nice if we saw them doing something a little bolder, a little more daring. But also, Apple doesn't demonstrate that it's got the manufacturing capabilities to significantly quickly course correct and retool their manufacturing. And it's very dangerous for them to try and do something too aggressively, too fast, or too experimental. The Apple's a really big ship, so they've got to make course corrections in nuanced ways. I don't think we'll see something tremendously different for 2019. From the Sentinel 909, I prefer super fast charging to battery capacity if I have to pick one. And then from Sharil Abdul Rahman, ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both? Moving right along, one more because because we got sidetracked, talking about Apple chargers to talking about Apple batteries. This is also from 9 to 5 Mac. Also from Benjamin Mayo. Italian Apple homepage forced to add iPhone battery throttling advisory as a result of lawsuit. Apple has been compelled to add a statement regarding the outcome of a planned obsolescence lawsuit to its homepage in Italy. The court ruled, I think the court ruling showed that Apple did not provide adequate information about the impact of performance, the iOS 10.2.1 update, which introduced the infamous iPhone performance throttling for degraded batteries. Apple lost a lawsuit at the end of 2018 in Italy, where a court said that Apple had not appropriately disclosed the changes to device performance in that update. Remember that Apple originally instated the performance throttling, I think included. Instated? I don't know. I've never heard that word before. Instated the performance throttling algorithms without any disclosure in release notes. I need to stop correcting articles as I read them and just read them as they were written, so I'm properly crediting what they are. But now on the Apple homepage, and you kind of have to scroll a little on apple.com/IT, you will find Apple Inc., Apple Distribution International, Apple Italy, and Apple Retail Italy have led consumers in the possession of iPhone 6, 6 Plus, 6S, and 6S Plus to install the iOS 10 operating system and subsequent updates without providing adequate information about the impact of that choice on the performance of the smartphones and without offering, if not to a limited extent or too late, any means of restoring the original functionality of the appliances in the event of a proven decrease in performance following the update, such as downgrading or battery replacement at a reasonable cost. This practice was deemed incorrect, pursuant to Articles 20, 21, 22, and 24 of the Legislative Decree number 206/2005 by the Italian Competition Authority. So, this is We talked about this last week. The Apple battery throttling scandal was sort of concluded in most media conversations. We are still untangling the ramifications of this practice in courts. We still have to examine the potential, the claims made against Samsung for engaging in similar performance degradation, algorithmic shenanigans. We can't keep selling increasingly expensive pocket computers that are made of a ton of rare materials assembled by human labor in very challenging environments, and then acting like, oh, well, you need to get rid of it after a year and spend another $1,000, or engage in another phone lease after 10 months. We need to start spending more wisely. We need to start encouraging a market where you can hold on to your phone for 3 years, because legitimately your phone is fine for 3 years. It's just we need to be able to pop out a battery, and then we also need, or should expect, software and security updates. Maybe not full operating system updates, but Android especially should be looking at security patches and updates for at least 3 years. Microsoft Windows style. Apple does a little bit better there when it comes to those updates, but then they can hide things in updates that harm your performance, because that's a great way to encourage you to go out and buy a new phone. And part of the reason why they do that is because they can also sell you a phone which has a battery that is by design too small to last you the full 2 years plus of your relationship with that phone. Apple have always put in really, really small batteries compared to the competition. And they make this argument, well, it's about efficiency. We don't need to put a larger battery in there because the hardware and the software are so perfectly synergized that they run more efficiently. And that's true for a year, but now the iPhone 10 is a part of the performance throttling page. Your iPhone 10, which is, a little bit more than a year old, now has that function sort of enabled, that it's going to, you can choose. You're like, oh yeah, your battery is starting to wear out, so let's slow your phone down, so it doesn't just suddenly shut off if you start getting into like the last 20% of the rated capacity of the battery. That's not good. That's $1,000 phone. It should have had a larger battery by design so that it could last as long as Apple, puffs their chest about offering software updates. Yeah, are you going to want to put software updates on a 4-year-old phone if it's battery throttled to within an inch of its life? Probably not. Here, let's go back through some of this. Sentinel 909. Apple loses lawsuit, pays a fine without blinking, nothing changes. Well, and they had to post on apple.com/IT. And that's going to get the word out to all those consumers out there affected by this. LFA reviews. I have been summoned. we were saying nice things about you, I promise. From Abdullah Chaudhry, I agree with you. I buy a new phone every 4 to 5 years now, and mostly because they're expensive. But the major problem is that there is no MP efficient and existent way to recycle phones. And that's another sad thing too. For companies celebrating, oh, we've got this initiative to recycle. I mean, a lot of this stuff doesn't really make it that far. I told you about some of the conversations I had with a major motherboard manufacturer. Like, they extract some of the more valuable materials out of tech, but often those contracts just go to whoever will grind up your tech components the cheapest. That's really not an environmental impact. It's more, can we extract gold and platinum and silver and other materials out of this stuff, and then the rest of it just gets ground up and it's dumped in a toxic landfill. We need to be doing better about this kind of stuff. We need to be able to repair our stuff, and we need to be able to use our stuff longer. Marcel Clappert, Apple iPhones have really good standby times. Yeah, they kind of do. They're good. My 10S actually hasn't been that great compared to some of the newer Android devices out there. Some of that, from Android 8 on, some of those initiatives that Google had for managing background services have kind of reached parity with, my ability to leave an iPhone on and then not use it for a day and then pick it up and see like very little battery had been drained from that. We're all kind of around, like it's all kind of there. From Harry's Beauty, dying AirPod battery here. Now, talk about disposable. And I still don't understand how AirPods became sort of like a jokey fashion trend. Like, oh, you don't have AirPods? I don't speak broke. Oh, you connecting those AirPods to an iPhone 5C. Like, I still think they look horrendous. They're terrible for your hearing. You subsidize Apple's profits at the expense of your hearing, and eventually you get to buy more expensive hearing aids sooner than you would otherwise need to. Also, that Apple can sell you a pair of headphones that look god awful, like Cybermen are taking over the planet. Oh, just put these things in your ears, and it's like they cut the cables off. How wacky and silly and fun. I'll never understand that. And again, truly wireless earbuds, tiny little batteries that have to be power cycled more often. Those batteries need to be charged more frequently because they're smaller capacity. Stuff like that just drives me crazy. I'm about to finish up another review on a pair of KZ earbuds, 5 drivers per ear, on a cable, but for like a little less than half the price of a pair of AirPods, and they sound so much better. And they're true inaurals, and just like every move towards this wireless space and the truly wireless space just seems to me to be like a cynical way of building more obsolescence into products, until another company shows me that you can expect the same kind of longevity from truly wireless earbuds as you can from like Bluetooth headphones, proper over-the-ear headphones, or a good neck band like what LG or what One More are doing by building in larger batteries into something that sits around the neck. Something like that seems to be more practical for the longevity of the purchase, way less prone to losing one earbud because they're tiny little earbuds, and what do you do with them when they're not in your ears? And you have more room for audio quality initiatives. Like, I have triple driver Bluetooth headphones with LDAC support from One More, and they sound real good. They sound really good. And we're talking only just a tiny, like a 10% price premium over a pair of AirPods, if that. Again, I have to do a comparative. I think they might actually be the same price. If you asked me, do you care about your ears? One makes a whole hell of a lot more sense than, oh, well, it's convenient to not have a cable. But then I also need to find ways of like storing them when I'm not using them. And I have to keep a little case in my pocket or my purse because I can't just drape them around my neck. That to me doesn't really seem more convenient. And from El Jefe, people still swear by their AirPods because of convenience. And the only argument I can make for convenience is Apple broke their ecosystem for audio. So you have a completely different solution for your Mac, for your iPad, and for your iPhone. So you can get a dongle for your iPhone, which doesn't work with your iPad now. So you have to have a different dongle for your iPad. And then most of your Macs still have the ability to plug in a 3.5 millimeter jack. You have 3 different products. You have 3 different solutions for plugging in the same pair of headphones. It'd just be easier is like a Bluetooth product with the W2 chip that you need to spend more for the batteries, for the radios, for the Bluetooths, for the W2 chip. All of that's licensed to Apple, so Apple gets to make more money, and they also wreck your hearing. Nothing could be easier. How convenient. I'm very frustrated by that. All right, real quick story as my voice is starting to fail and we're into the last 15 minutes of the show. I'm gonna finish in 2 hours. I want to thumbs up of glory to Germany. This is from The Verge, written by James Vincent. Facebook ordered to stop combining WhatsApp and Instagram data without consent in Germany. I need to take a quick drink of water. I'm going to highlight this for those of you watching the video so you can see what I'm about to read. I love seeing this kind of European involvement in the tech sector. Germany's national competition regulator, similar to what we talked about with Italy, has ordered Facebook to stop combining user data from different sources without voluntary consent. The order applies to data collected by Facebook-owned platforms like WhatsApp and Instagram, but also third-party sources that Facebook uses to flesh out its advertising profiles, including those of non-users. Even if you don't have a Facebook account, this is me adding that to the article. Even if you don't have a Facebook account, Facebook is still tracking you. Let's see if I can say this. I can't really speak German very well. The Bundeskartellamt. How about I say the Federal Cartel Office has given Facebook 1 month to appeal the landmark decision, which comes after a 3-year investigation. They've been investigating this for 3 years. If the appeal fails, the tech company will have to ensure these data sources are not combined without consent within the next 4 months. Although the ruling only applies within Germany, the decision could influence regulators in other countries. Again, Germany and France are kind of becoming the California of the EU. If California says, hey, you can't do that if you want to do business in California, the rest of the country kind of has to go along with that. Ditto New York. If Germany says, you can't engage in this type of business practice within the confines of Germany, Facebook has to design products either just for Germany, or they're going to look at the whole EU market and say, like, it doesn't make sense for us to redesign this product or this data collection net for every single country we do business with. I guess we're just going to have to put a pop-up when you launch Instagram to say, now you can link Instagram with your Facebook Messenger. Would you like to combine them, yes or no? And then people like me will say, oh, hell no. Hell no, leave it alone. Please do not do that. Please stop activating these things by default. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you so much, Facebook. I hate you. And then from there, we can get on with our daily lives of not really using these products as much as we used to, because the recent changes to the way that they organize information and have gone algorithmic instead of chronological absolutely ruin the platform for interaction with the people I care about. But I digress. From Abdullah Chaudhry, hey, I'm born in Germany and proud to live here. Many people don't even use Facebook here anymore. I can speak for 14 to 30-year-olds. They are introducing very tough data security laws now. Look up DSGVO. I will look up the DSGVO. From Sexy Potatoes, kind of like how Twitter blocks all Nazi in Germany by law. Yeah, that's kind of another interesting aspect of where do we draw the line on privacy and security and free speech and local, and by local I mean country to country based regulations on speech. We have a lot of problems. Lots of problems need to be solved. Okay, last story. And again, this is I'm going to continue bringing this story up because I desperately do not want elected officials. I do not want politicians weighing in on entertainment and content. They do a bad job of it. They should stop doing it. But if content producers and game developers can't police themselves and properly inform consumers, then the only recourse we'll have are really big, dumb, broadsword laws that will probably do more damage than they do good. But again, the game industry has this coming if they can't shape up. One aspect of the industry that could have a positive effect on these types of situations, like gambling mechanics in video games, are game reviewers. So if the video game industry, the ESRB, will not rate content of a game as it pertains to microtransactions and gambling mechanics, game reviewers could maybe help make up that difference. And so I have to throw a huge celebratory thumbs up to OpenCritic. OpenCritic now flags loot box mechanics. This is from the OpenCritic blog, an article on OpenCritic. Over a year ago, fresh off releases such as Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Middle-earth: Shadow of War, we promised on Twitter that we would take a stand against loot boxes. While it's taken us a little while to actually implement these changes, we're proud to announce that we finally introduced this new label. Games that use loot box mechanics now have a prominent notification. Why are we doing this? The OpenCritic team believes that loot boxes are a net negative for the video game industry. Loot boxes prey on humans' generally poor ability to accurately understand and internalize probabilities, especially at the extremes. Rather than offer in-game items directly, loot boxes are used to mask the underlying cost of extremely attractive items. Industry leaders have tried to spin loot boxes as fun game mechanics, similar to opening presents on Christmas morning and discovering what's inside. These institutions downplay the significance of loot boxes, claiming that they are cosmetic only or completely optional, or can be earned through the course of normal gameplay. These arguments ignore the perceived value of cosmetics, the progression systems built on them, and the sluggish pace that effectively locks content. We want to be clear that this isn't a claim that all randomization mechanics are negative. The Gwent system in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt was a valuable addition to the game. Watch Dogs and Red Dead Redemption both have gambling mini-games that were fun and immersive. Roguelikes thrive on randomization. However, over the last year, much of the industry has failed to address the uncomfortable reality of loot box mechanics. They are gambling, paying a few dollars for a chance at something with perceived value. Government bodies, legislators, and researchers have begun researching and understanding the impact of this form of gambling on all types of consumers. While officials conduct their analysis, we encourage developers and publishers who are considering loot box mechanics to consider the impact of these mechanics on players. It is our mission to help gamers make informed decisions when considering a purchase or download. We feel that informing consumers about the presence of loot boxes is a key part of our mission. Kudos. I'm going to be having some conversations with a few of my friends who are game reviewers, and I hope this is a trend that catches on. That you review games immediately. The discussion of content, player progression, gameplay mechanics becomes front and center, and that maybe if the game industry is reluctant to change how they rate games, that game reviewers can help empower consumers to make better purchasing decisions for themselves and for their families. And this is a phenomenal reply to a part of the industry that we've all been very frustrated with. And yet the industry seems to act like, no, there's just nothing we can do. You can't make a Star Wars. EA, well, first of all, EA can't make a Star Wars game. They've canceled so many Star Wars games. What I wouldn't give for just like a new pod racer. Oh, that's a neat trick. But if the game developers, game publishers can't seem to find a solution, and we keep building game mechanics and player progression on reprehensible or aggressively predatory business practices, then the rest of the community needs to start being more vocal about those aspects of gameplay that we disagree with, and move beyond just like Reddit boycotting another pre-order. You know, like, oh, don't pre-sale. Remember, don't do that. Doesn't really move the needle on the rest of the gaming audience at large. If these types of things start instantly eroding its scores, I think game reviewers, in trying to curry favor for so long with the game developers and game industry, have forgotten that like a Metacritic score on a game can have a significant impact on the perceived value of a brand and the perceived value of a company. You know, millions of dollars of stock valuation slide through that first 24 hours of a mega title's release. And if a mega title is sort of smeared with this game promotes gambling for kids, that will make shareholders very nervous about the future propositions of investing in that kind of company. And that's going to have an effect on the bottom line of you know, how valuable that company is, how they do business, and how they sell their product. So I'm very happy to see OpenCritic making this kind of a conversation. A huge conversation that I'm missing about microphones and recording technique. And the nitpicker, place the mic off access to your mouth. That should help quite a lot. Wow. That's a pretty advanced little voiceover tip there. Well done. Nicely done. Abraham Artemis, give them the clap that they deserve. Not the clap. Don't give them the clap. Just the applause that they deserve. Fat Produce, another thing that's going to be important to combat, though, is these game publishers incorporating Anthem microtransaction schemes after all the major reviews come out. And that's another thing, too, is now every game has like a preview demo period, which you have to be on the pulse. You have to play the incomplete version of the game. That starts to be the final word on the review. And the same thing happens in like the tech hardware scene. Is like if you're under embargo, you've got to crank out a review in like 2 weeks on a product that you've barely had time to use. And then that's the major spike of the conversation. You come back to that phone like 3 months later, and you're not going to have the same traffic. It's still going to take you a long time to produce a lot of work to make that. And it colors that like, well, you need to be a part of that first wave. You need to be a part of that first push. You can't come back to it later. Blah, 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 blah. And that's also what's going to happen with gaming. If a game publisher knows they're going to get a ton of hate press on a certain microtransaction scheme, then they just won't include it at launch. And then they'll, oh yeah, I mean, there's a ton of grind, but we have ways you're going to adjust the mechanics, how you get your gold bars. I mean, all of that's going to change. This is just the preview. This is just the demo version. And then, no, what you do is you just give us money, and then you can buy your gold bars instead of having to grind for them so long if you just want a different rifle. I'm not bitter. Marshall Clapper, well, yeah, Juan, but you get a new Star Wars movie nearly every year since Disney bought the copyrights from George Lucas. The greater part of the Star Wars universe, I mean, LucasArts used to make and license a ton of Star Wars games. I mean, I made a joke about pod racing, but like, I would love to see a modern day Rogue Squadron or a TIE Fighter. EA wouldn't have to put a lot towards it. Hell, even in this current climate, EA is going to revive Command and Conquer by doing a remaster, thankfully using Petroglyph. The studio that used to be Westwood. And again, another shout out for Forged Battalion. If you like your RTS old school, that's a great RTS with modern tech tree elements. $20 on Steam. Go get it. It's a great game. Why not do like a refresh of X-Wing and TIE Fighter? Just update the graphics. They did it once. What was it? The original X-Wing then got the original TIE Fighter got a refresh, updated graphics, and then a CD quality score. They've already done it once. Do it again. And again, charge me $30 and I will happily throw $30 at a remaster of TIE Fighter. EA can't even do that. They have this license and they're just sitting on it, and they've been canceling more games than they've actually been, finishing and distributing. And this is a family franchise. This is Star Wars. This is something that I eventually will want, I think, to share with my daughter. Maybe. I don't know. There's not fun stuff to share that isn't, sort of couched in terrible predatory business transactions just to play the game. EA, not a good ambassador for healthy gameplay mechanics. Then maybe we will pass on Star Wars and get her interested in other aspects of science fiction and fantasy. This is funny. The hashtags back to back. Marcel Clappert, hashtag some funny guy. Aditya Anil, hashtag some consumer rights activist guy. Marcel Clappert again, hashtag some audiophile guy. I'm not an audiophile. I'm an audio snob. I'm a practical recording snob. Not I need to have the right tube preamp for my tube amplifier for my headphones and my vinyl. Fat Produce, I would absolutely love to see a refresh of X-Wing versus TIE Fighter 2. Have online multiplayer and console multiplayer cross-platform. And desktop would crush console. Come on. You get some nerds on flight sticks on PCs versus some console players on controllers. No contest. No contest. Abdullah Chaudhry, Lego Star Wars is really, really good. And I did a game stream on the Razer Phone 2, the Android version of Lego Star Wars. Great. Plays really, really good. Again, supposedly phones are terrible for gaming, but if you want to play through Lego Star Wars and you don't want to have to find a copy for, a console or for a PC, like Android App Store. I think it's $9. It's the full Star Wars Lego collection. Awesome. Plays great. All right, folks. That's the end of news and the podcast. And my voice is just barely holding on. I have like 3 videos to shoot this afternoon. I'm super dumb. Let me take another drink of water. Oh, that is a delicious coffee mug right there with the pickles on it. Ah, excellent. Okay, folks. Excuse me. Yes, just those little bits of housekeeping. I'm going to reiterate my plea for sanity and discussion in older gadgets. What do we do about phone reviews and phone discussion when you get a phone a little bit later, like a Razer Phone 2, and it's tough to play that SEO game on YouTube? What should we talk about, and how should we handle it? Definitely would love to hear or see your thoughts on phones like the View 20 after this initial push and surge of reviews are out. What should we talk about, and how should we handle it? Then also, the other shout out, please check out reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. And hopefully you'll find some up-and-coming YouTube producers and tech reviewers that might interest you, court your fancy. We've been seeing positive growth there, and I hope to continue that. And if you do the Reddits, also just drop us some upvotes and see if we can't help these producers get a little bit more exposure. Most of the people that have been submitted to this subreddit are below the cap for monetization on YouTube. They are still building their audiences and are making really high quality videos and aren't able to monetize their work. And we can have a positive impact on improving that situation, fixing that situation, changing that, because I really think YouTube did a huge disservice to their producer base, their content creator base, by moving the goalposts on people starting their channels while doing very little to address the problems that some of their top producers have in terms of pissing off advertisers. So the problem really wasn't the small YouTuber with 1,000 subscribers. It was people with millions of followers doing reprehensible things, but who got hit? The little guy. So we hopefully can fix some of that, address some of that. And I'm going to make the Our Glowing Rectangles Roundup a regular part of this podcast, talk about some of the videos, and maybe go a little bit more in depth on those than making this all news topics and stuff. We can shake up the format of this podcast a little too, to kind of help shine a light on some people doing some really, really good work, some great work. And then also, because I forgot to mention it on last week's podcast, please go check out Andrew and I at Fat Produce in the chat. Everyone loves at Fat Produce in the chat. He's one of the best aspects of joining my podcast because he's always on point with the conversation. We had another Geek Book Club talking about some Civil War era historical fiction, The Killer Angels, an amazing read. One of the best, because I'm not a huge fan of kind of historical fiction. Could not put this book down. We have a 2-hour conversation about it. You can go check that out. And Andrew is a major history nerd. So like in the middle of the podcast, he just brings out his rifle. You're like, oh, okay, we're going there. Awesome. So I would highly recommend you guys checking that out too. The Geek Book Club, which you can also find on my YouTube channel, and previous episodes you can find on your favorite podcast catcher. So, last but not least, I have to throw a major thumbs up, shout out, thank you to the folks that are supporting on the Patreon. Last week I posted up another article and another production diary talking about how I produce headphone reviews. And I got some good positive feedback from the people on Patreon, and I think they've convinced me that this could be another video that will go public. So something that I originally wrote just as a production diary for the Patreon folks is now going to be something that maybe will hopefully be an entertaining video for everybody. And again, that only could have arrived through their support, not just financial, but also the contributions that they have in helping me plan future videos, helping me work through some of these topics. And then also, sort of establishing like what kind of work we want to be doing, what kind of tech conversations. That community has been phenomenal for helping me shape what I'm working on and how I'm working on it. So if you're interested in supporting production on this YouTube channel, please check out patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, and maybe considering chipping in occasionally when you feel like it, when you can, and then joining some of these conversations, because I draw a lot of inspiration and I get a lot of help in where I'm going with this stuff. This video that I'm talking about from the article that I wrote is an entire, from soup to nuts, examination of the process of how I go about crafting a headphone review. What I listen to, how I listen to it, where I listen to it, what I listen to it on, and then the different audio inspirations and musical stylings that I try to examine so that I can pick out specific elements of headphone and earbud performance. So, I mean, if you're interested in what craft goes into that kind of a conversation or that kind of a review, there's already an article that you can go and check out. But if you want to see a video like that, it wouldn't have existed had it not been for the Patreon folks saying, this could be an interesting video. We would like to see something like this. So, a lot of people have said, oh yeah, please make it public. But again, I am sort of a solo operation of production, and without some kind of support, be it sharing videos, sharing posts, retweeting content, and more than just like, well, I watched your video and I gave it a like, does very little in this current climate of YouTube. It's, if you know of producers out there, you enjoy their work. Right now, we're all kind of depending in this existential crisis of content creation on the internet, where we all depend on a higher tier or a more engaged involvement, more back and forth, more active participation, sharing, etc. So again, if that sounds like something that's of interest to you, you only have the folks at Patreon to thank for me even considering doing sort of a public version of what I posted for them specifically. So let's wrap this up. Thank you so much. This was another amazing live chat, and I'm sorry that there were some conversations about microphones and recording that I wasn't able to jump into. Obviously, my first passion was audio recording and voiceover direction, and I maybe we can plan some other topics on video content and video production in the future, and we can get into some of that too, because I'm always game to join like how to get the best out of your voice in your recording setup and your podcasting setup, and I think that's always a lot of fun. And again, I always want to say thank you for hanging with me through some dicey tech and politics conversations, because I know politics aren't everyone's favorite things to talk about, but I feel increasingly, if we're going to have fun with our technology, we need to get a handle on some of the darker aspects of what this entire industry might promote. So thank you so much for watching, for sharing videos, for subscribing to my channel. A little less on the subscribing. The sharing is probably more important than the subscribing. You guys know where you can catch me every Monday morning. The SGGQA podcast, where we're going to break down this coming week's top news stories. We're going to try and have a little fun talking about some hopefully positive stuff. We're going to have the lead up to MWC. We're probably going to start seeing some more leaks and pre-release information on some of the new gadgets coming out for 2019. So we're really we're running into the beginning of the year harvest season. I know a lot of reviewers are going to be crazy busy trying to catch everything that they're going to try and talk about and make videos on and focus the discussion on. And again, I can't do that without your support, your contributions, your conversation, and your ideas joining this conversation. So, you know where you can find me over the next week on the rest of the internet at SomeGadgetGuy, on the socials, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and I will catch you all on next week's Monday morning tech chat on the SGGQA podcast channel. Do awesome this week. Have awesome experiences with your technology, and share some of those with me. Tweet me, write me, email me. I'm kind of curious what you guys are up to. I'll catch you next week. I love you all. Be well.